Good morning. We are going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us for the December Medina County Safety Council meeting. My name is Stephanie Mueller, and I am with the Greater Medina Chamber of Commerce and the liaison for the Medina County Safety Council. So we are excited that you are here to join us. So we're going to go through just a few housekeeping things before today's meeting. We ask that everybody please keep themselves on mute. So you can click on the little microphone icon. We will have question and answer session at the end. So please feel free to type any questions into the chat box. You don't have to wait until the end to type in your question. So if you have a question that you're thinking of, don't forget it. Just go ahead and type it into the chat function, and then we will go ahead and relay those to our presenters at the end. And then we're also asking if you could not show your video. So if you click off your video, that will help us with the bandwidth so that we will be able to see our speaker's presentation for today. So for our meeting today, we're going to talk about our charitable donation from Safety Council. Carrie will provide an update from BWC. Then we will go into our presentation, we'll do our Q&A, and then we will adjourn, keeping this to hopefully an hour or less of your time. So typically during this time of year, usually at the November Safety Council meeting, we ask our members to help with a drive of some sort of a donation. Last year, helping one of the battered women's shelters in town. This year, obviously, things are a little different and we weren't meeting in person. So the steering committee from Safety Council got together and decided that we wanted to make a charitable donation to Feeding Medina County for this year. So we will be making a donation of $1,500 to Feeding Medina County. We certainly know that the need for food has increased this year along what side with the pandemic. And being able to provide Feeding Medina County with additional dollars this year will help them to provide more meals to those that are served throughout the county. So we encourage you as members or prospective members of Safety Council to make a donation along with us to Feeding Medina County. I know that monetary donations go the furthest for the organization. So you are welcome to send a donation directly to Feeding Medina County. When we send a recap from this, we will send their contact information, or if you want to send it on to the Safety Council and we can send it into them as well, we would be happy to do that. But we are pleased to help another community organization this year with a monetary donation. And hopefully next year we will be together in person and we'll be able to do another drive. We're actually bringing in items to our meeting. So with that being said, I will introduce Carrie Gray, who is our BWC Safety Consultant and our liaison for our group. Carrie?
Hello, everybody. Carrie Gray. I miss you all. You can see my contact information there. I am the safety consultant with the Safety Council from the BWC, and I'm still getting lots of questions, lots of emails, lots of phone calls. That is awesome. Keep them coming. I'm answering as soon as I can, but just know we're still here for you if you do have questions, and there's my contact information. If you want to go to the next slide, a couple of the BWC updates that I have for you. One, obviously, like I said, I'm here for you. Two, there are more face coverings coming out. So those you guys all should have, or at least if you're not self-insured, you got a large quantity of white face coverings. Most of them were white, and there's another batch coming out. I believe we're sending out another 23 million face coverings. Just like last time, they're going to the smaller employers first and then working our way up to the bigger employers. I know some of the smaller ones have gotten them. So if you haven't gotten it yet, they're coming. Just be patient. We're getting them out as soon as we get them in. Another really neat thing this time is they are going to all be made in Ohio, or at least that's the intent. So it's taking a little longer to get them that way, but we're getting there and we're doing it. A couple updates that we have from the BWC December update. There's some really neat stuff coming out. We've spent some time updating the written programs that are available out there on our website, and we've also updated our safety talk. So you probably remember, at least when we had the live meetings, I would talk about toolbox talks and the resources that are out there. And those are the safety talks. Those are all being updated, and a lot of them are already out, and they're really good. They're, hey, Mr. Supervisor, I need you to lead a safety talk, and you can, download or print out this form and give it to them, and it's, start to finish, how to lead it, and ways to get folks engaged, interactive, new, updated, good information. And all you'd have to do is go to the BWC website and type in safety talks or written programs. You're going to find both of those. We are doing webinars. So there was a webinar actually this morning, and they're doing winning management commitment and then lockout tagout on December 29th. January, actually the first 2 weeks of January, they decided they're going to take a break. So that's why there's nothing in there. And then starting up in the third week of January, we have one on, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's HAZWOPER. So do you have HAZWOPER employees, and helping you determine that. So stuff's still coming out. We're still here for you. We're trying to do what we can. If you flip to the next slide, we are also doing virtual classes. Perfect example, I am teaching OSHA record keeping tomorrow. That's one's already crossed out there. I'm teaching OSHA record keeping tomorrow. I think there's still 2 or 3 spots left in that class. It's actually a virtual class, so it's going to be kind of like this. We're going to be in a WebEx meeting like this, and we're going to be teaching OSHA record keeping. Like I said, I'm one of the instructors, so if you're needing some OSHA record keeping, that might be one way to do it. We're running, it's 9:30 to about 1 o'clock, and you can get credits for that, so that's an option. They did have that class in January scheduled, but there was really low enrollment, so they did cancel that. But I'm teaching OSHA record keeping again February 10th. So if you can't go tomorrow and you really need it, sign up for the February 10th class, and you'll get the same thing that you would get tomorrow, because I'm teaching both of them, or co-teaching it. The bwclearningcenter.com would be where you register for that. Just create a free account and you can register, and there's online classes for that as well. With that, I am going to turn it over to the amazing and wonderful Matt and Doug, and I'm going to let them give you their bios rather than me doing it. But we do have Matt Toner from Nestle and Doug Ponstler from COVE, which I am so excited about listening to this presentation. I've heard Doug talk a couple times, and I learn something every time I do. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and I'd say let's go.
Very good, Carrie. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to be here with Matt today, and really looking forward to our time together. Carrie, can I ask you, can you see the screen okay?
Yes, it looks perfect.
Okay, awesome. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you to all the EHS professionals that are on the call, and anyone in operations as well. I suspect that none of you had the pandemic on your radar screen as you thought about your 2020 safety plans, and the reaction that you've all come together to support your businesses, has been simply amazing based upon the exposure that I've had to organizations. So congratulations on that. Carrie, congratulations to the BWC in terms of, I guess I'll call them rebates or whatever, but the acceleration of getting money back to businesses in Ohio. As part of supporting the economic issues and COVID as well has been, quite amazing, millions and millions of dollars. And that's also a reflection of the outstanding performance, that we see from businesses as well. So congratulations to BWC on that. I'm going to go really quickly here today because I want to make sure that we get to Matt, and Matt can talk about the Nestle story. But in the form of introduction, again, my name's Doug Ponstler. I'm chairman and managing director of COVE, the Center of Visual Expertise. I spent about 40 years in industry between Eaton Corporation and Owens Corning. And it was while I was at Owens Corning, I retired February of 2018. And in my role as Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety at Owens Corning, we discovered this thing from the Toledo Museum of Art, and that's the building that's on your screen, called visual literacy. And it really played a significant role in how we began to think about how we equip and how we prepare our people to be able to go out in the work environment and be able to see the sort of things that can cause us problems day in and day out. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, and that's visual literacy. So my pleasure to be here. I would be remiss coming from a museum if I didn't show you at least one work of art. And this is the Architect's Dream, a painting by Thomas Cole, an American painter, painted in approximately 1840. And it's a large scale composition, probably 6 foot by 8 foot or 10 foot. So it's fairly large. And you know, what's interesting about this particular work of art is that there's lots of different architectural styles that are combined in this composition. And that was Thomas Cole's intent. He wanted to paint things that he liked. And these are all the different styles that he liked. Now, what's interesting about this is the painting itself is interesting, but also your interaction with the painting while I've been talking. Some of you will have seen some things and some of you will have seen other things, because as individuals, we see things differently and we pay attention to different things. That's true in a work of art. It's true in our workplace as well. And I'll show you another image. This isn't the Architect's Dream, but this is an image you may be more familiar with in your day-to-day activities in your organization. And it's a building expansion of some form, or maybe a new construction or a significant renovation. But just like the Architect's Dream, there's a lot going on in this particular image. And as each of you have looked at the image, you have saw some things that others have not seen. And that's because how we see and how we interpret is heavily, heavily, heavily based on our experiences, our expectations, and biases that we have regarding what we pay attention to and what we don't. And what we're going to talk about today is, number one, the recognition that that's real. And number two, I'm going to share just a real simple tool that we can apply. This sort of allows us to decompose what it is that we're looking at and actually be able to see more about the environment that we might be examining. As I mentioned, you know, we all see things a bit differently. We're all different. We all have different experiences and backgrounds and education and knowledge. There's a whole plethora of things that come together that cause us to pay attention to certain things and not necessarily pay attention to others. Some of you, when you look at the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you'll immediately see a duck. Some will actually see a rabbit. If you look at the right side of the screen, some will see a younger lady, some will see a more mature lady. And if you look at the image in the bottom of your screen, some will have seen good right away, some will have seen evil. And it's just a reflection of that's how we're made up. That's how we work as individuals. We're all different and we all draw different interpretation in terms of what it is that we look at and what we see. You know, often I get the question, well, what really is visual literacy? And unless you have been through some art education, or perhaps you're a teacher that had some visual literacy training in your education, we can sort of interpret what visual literacy is because we know what visual is and we tend to know what literacy is. But the definition that I want you to remember from today is that visual literacy is all about what we see, what we believe it means, and what do we do about it. And if you think about those three statements, how relevant are those three statements to the work that we do in the EHS function? And they are very relevant, because what we do in the EHS function is a lot of looking, hoping we see things. We do a lot of interpretation in terms of what it means, and we're constantly deciding what actions need to be taken in order to be able to protect ourselves and those that we work with and around. We like to say at COVE, you know, it's not enough to intellectually, you know something, know what hazards are. We must be able to see them as well. And I'm sure that we've all had experiences where we've dealt with individuals that are really, really book smart on any given topic. But the ability to go out and reliably apply it in the workplace, sometimes there's a gap in that. And quite honestly, some of that gap comes from how completely we're able to see what's in front of us. So, you know, it doesn't do us as much good to have intellectual knowledge as it does to have intellectual knowledge and then be able to apply it. And in the case of hazards, that is going out into the workplace and being able to see it. Now, I hate to kind of ruin your day, but we don't see as well as what we think we do. And I'm not talking about 20/20 vision or anything like that. I'm talking about how we process what we see. We really take our capability to look at something and really see what's there for granted. And we are overly confident that when we look at something, we really see what's there. And if there's any statement that sort of, you know, can cause us to realize that that's true, you know, how many times have we had an incident, and when we reflected back on the incident, we realized, you know, well, I've walked by that 1,000 times and I never saw it until the incident occurred. And the incident informed me that we had this particular issue to deal with. And that's a lousy way to kind of drive a safety program. As important as it is to, once we have an incident, to get to root cause and make sure that it doesn't happen again anywhere, it's also important that we're able to be proactive and prevent the incident from happening at all. The second thing that we often don't really realize, and that is we think we see with our eyes, but we actually see with our brain. Our eyes collect the stimuli that our brain directs us to look at, and then our brain interprets that stimuli in terms of what it means. So if we can influence the way that we think about seeing, we have a better opportunity to be able to really see what's there. 24%, you know, sometimes, you know, the question comes up, well, in incidents that occur, how often is it that seeing was a component or lack of seeing was a component in that particular incident? We took a database of about 17,000 incidents that had occurred over 19 years. And we had that database analyzed by a data scientist who used some really great advanced tools in order to be able to really dig into incident descriptions and corrective actions and data that was captured. And his belief was that in about 24% of the incidents that occurred, it was described in a way that seeing actually contributed, or lack of seeing contributed, to the incident itself. And so we're talking about something here that's not an immaterial issue, and most likely understated, because until, you know, our work over the last 3 years, seeing really wasn't recognized as a potential contributor to incidents that occur. You know, we thought about a lot of different things, but we didn't think about how well we see and how well we interpret what it is that we see. Now, this is your typical refrigerator. This is the refrigerator in our home. And like most, it has some items that are on it. Your refrigerator may look the same. It may look more cluttered. It may look less cluttered. But it's certainly something that, particularly during the pandemic, when we're all at home more, that we visit multiple times a day. Now, I'm going to ask you to take a second, and I want you to think about your refrigerator. And I want you to think about how detailed can you be in identifying what's on your refrigerator. And I'm not talking about, you know, just, well, there's probably a to-do list, or maybe there's a school picture, or maybe there's family pictures. You know, I'm talking about a to-do list that has what on it. I'm talking about a family picture of what. I'm talking about a drawing of what. And if you're like most people, it's difficult to think in very specific terms what's actually on your refrigerator without going and looking. And that's because your refrigerator becomes so familiar to us that we no longer see what's there. We just walk by it, we open the doors, but we no longer see what's on our refrigerator. And the same is true in our workplaces. We become so familiar with what's in our workplace that we no longer really see what's there. So there's 4 things that I want to add to the takeaways for today. And the first one is, once you see something, it's really hard to remember what it was like not to see it. And I think we all may have joked at different times that I really wish I wouldn't have saw that, because now I can't get it out of my head. And that's true. And I'm going to show you evidence of that in a second. That works in our favor, but it can also work against us. The second thing is that sometimes we can't see what's in front of us, even if we know it's there. This has a lot to do with the context by which we examine the world and what we see. We're going to talk about that as well. And then the last two things really come together, and that is we are always filling in the blanks. The brain is filling in the blanks. And sometimes we see as little as 10% of what it is that we're looking at, and the other 90% is being filled in automatically by the brain. Now, there's neuroscience reasons for that we can talk about. There's energy consumption reasons that we can talk about that contributes to that. But the reality is we do a lot of looking or glancing with the brain filling in what it believes we are looking at based upon our experiences, our expectations, and our biases. So let's look at some examples that can help illustrate those points. First example, and if you've been around COVE, you may have seen this before, but what we have is a jungle picture. And if we were together and we had more time, we would talk about, as individuals, what are we seeing here? What do we think this is? But there's obviously a very specific thing, because the question posed is, can you see it? And in this black and white image with some reflection off foliage, it's a little hard to maybe identify specifically what the it is. So I'm going to help you out and add a little bit of contrast in the form of color. And when I add that color, I think most of you, and if you haven't seen it yet, you'll see it in a moment. In the lower right-hand corner, we see a predator. We see a panther. And because of that contrast that's been added, that panther is much easier to see than what it was in the black and white image. Now, you know, some will say, well, there's no real big mystery to that. You hide a panther in a black and white image and I can't see it. And then you put color there and obviously the panther stands out. So what's the big deal about that? And that's not the big deal. The big deal is when I go back to the black and white image, you still see the panther. And this is an illustration of once we see something, it's really hard to unsee it. And if we were together next Christmas time and we were going through a similar slide deck and I put the picture up of the black and white jungle, it would take you a second to connect with, yeah, this is the jungle picture and there's a panther in the bottom right-hand corner and you will see the panther. Once I see something, it's really hard to unsee it. We often think when we talk about images that images are simply paintings and pictures and sculptures and things of that nature. But everything that we look at and see is actually an image, including letters and numbers. And I don't believe there's anyone on the call that would have a difficulty, answering the question, can you read this? If we're English speaking, we have no problem with that whatsoever. If I ask you to read this, most of you would say, well, that's the same thing. Can you read this? When in actuality, it's not. If you were literally reading this statement, it would be ka-wa-you-re-ts. But your brain doesn't allow you to naturally do that. The brain works to make sense out of what it is that we're seeing. And in this case, biased by the fact that we just saw this sentence, but even without being biased by that, the brain is filling in the blanks. So we can make sense out of this. The brain is telling us this is not ka-wa-you-re-ts, it's can you read this with some missing letters. The brain's filling in the blanks. And we can look at this that we've not seen before and the same thing happens. Are you reading this? The brain will automatically fill in the blanks because it wants it to make sense out of what it is that we look at. Context really matters as well in terms of how we interpret what it is that we look at and what we see. And if I was to poll you and say, well, what is this that's on the screen? Many of you would say a 13. Some of you would say a poorly written B. So it could either be a number or it could be a letter. Let me add some context and see if we can clear that up. So now I've added the 12 and the 14, and the probability of this now being a 13, is really going through the roof. It makes total sense that this would be a 13. The other context of what you're looking at is numbers. It fits perfectly in the sequence of 12, 13, 14. It's obviously a 13. Well, let me change the context. So now in the sequence of letters, maybe it's not a 13. Maybe it is actually a poorly written B. Context really influences our interpretation of what it is that we're looking at and what it means to us. We may enter one of our facilities or one of our departments or, you know, you name it, and the bias that we have and the image that we have about what we are about to see influences what we actually see. We may be walking into an area that we believe, based upon what we've heard, what we've saw, what we've experienced, is probably going to be a mess. It's going to be disorderly, and there's going to be all kinds of hazards that are present. Then that may or may not be true. We can have the inverse feelings. I've been either here or I've heard about it, and it's organized and they operate safely. And that's what I see when I walk into the environment. Our biases and our experiences and our expectations play heavily on what it is that we see when we look. And just to maybe lose a little sleep tonight, I'll give you both contexts and you're back where you started. Is it a 13 or is it a B? The good news is that even with these limitations of when we look at something, how clearly we're able to see what's there, we can improve our ability to see. And we can do that by applying some discipline and some structure with how we actually look at things. And this is the work of the Toledo Museum of Art. The Toledo Museum of Art has a long history in teaching visual literacy to teachers, to art students, to art appreciators, really focused on those three things that I talked about earlier. You know, what is it that we see? What does it mean to us? And what action do we take as a result of understanding that? What we've done at COVE is we've taken that framework for how we see, and we've applied it to the work that we do in industry, the work that we do in service businesses, focused primarily on safety, but in other areas of operation as well. The core tool that the museum teaches and we apply is the art of seeing art. And the art of seeing art is this triangle. I want to make a couple key points about the triangle. We're not going to go through it in total detail, but the triangle is upside down purposely because whenever we look at something, whenever we examine a work environment or a home environment, we always want to start with the broadest perspective, and that's the widest part of the triangle. And then we begin to narrow what it is that we're looking at to really being able to observe what's there and then really be able to see what's there. And if we're able to really see what's there at some level of detail, then we're able to interpret more accurately what's in front of us. And then we can take the right actions that will make sure that whatever it is that we're seeing, we're dealing with it properly. The risk that we too often have is that we just stay at the top of the triangle. We move from looking at something to an immediate interpretation. And we do that because we're under pressure. We've got a lot of things to get done. We believe we know what it is that we're looking at. Often we'll refer to this as, you know, leaping or jumping to a conclusion. But what we really need to do to be able to see better and see detail better is we got to move down the triangle, not across the triangle. And we have to stop leaping to these conclusions and these interpretations. And we can use hazard assessment as, you know, one example of that when applied to safety. I've said already that visual literacy is really all about what do you see, what does it mean, and what do you do about it? And in the context of hazard identification, we're looking for the hazard. We're applying our risk assessment tools to determine, you know, what does it really mean? Is it high risk or low risk? And from that, we're determining what action we're going to take as a result. So by default, if we can do a better job of actually being able to see what's there, we'll do a better job of assessing the risk, and we'll do a much better job of taking the actions that are appropriate to protect ourselves and protect our people. This is the essence of a very proactive safety management process, identifying hazards in advance and not waiting to learn what they are because we're walking by them every day and not seeing them. You know, fundamental to, you know, this whole process is we have to slow down. The good news is we don't have to slow down a lot. We get a lot of benefit by slowing down just a matter of seconds or even minutes if we have the opportunity to do that. But we've got to slow down. Now, this isn't the first time that any of us have been told, typically after we've made some sort of an error, that, you know, Doug, you need to slow down. And that's obvious after the fact. But the question is, if we proactively slow down, what is it that we then do? Slow down to do what? Slowing down isn't enough unless we're able to take some action as a result of slowing down. And I'm going to talk about one of those actions that we can take that while we slow down, we can apply some simple tools that allow us to be able to see better. And I'm going to return to the architect's dream in terms of being able to illustrate a very simple tool called the elements of art. And I'll remind you, when we saw this image in the beginning, I talked about how, you know, some will have saw some things in the image, some will have saw others. Some will have saw the painter that's on top of the column in the lower right-hand corner examining his work. Some will have seen the fountain because it's in the center of the composition. Some of you may be boaters and you might have noticed the boats in the canal in front of the buildings. I could go on, but suffice to say that you as individuals will be drawn to certain things and you will not see others. But if we take the elements of art and we think about, well, let's break down the composition. Let's not look at it using our natural tendencies. Let's look at it in a more structured way. And what we encourage there is the application of the elements of art, looking for lines and shapes and colors and texture and space. If we start to look at it differently, we start to see different things. And I'll give you 3 illustrations of line, shapes, and colors just to make that point. If we break the composition down and we start to look for lines, we start to see things that we just didn't notice before, because we've broken out of our normal tendency in how we look at something. We've left those biases behind. We've left those experiences behind. We've left those expectations behind. And now we're just looking for lines. And what is it that we see? We can do the same thing with shapes. Often this is the first time that some in our workshops will actually notice there's a pyramid in the background, because they weren't looking for a pyramid. But when they started to look for a triangle, they started to see it. They started to see the pyramid. And we can do the same thing with color. All of a sudden, by looking specifically for color, we start to notice things that we didn't notice before because we weren't paying attention to color. And I could do the same with texture. I could do the same with space. But if we just use those simple devices of looking for lines, shapes, and colors, we start to see things that we didn't see before. We break the composition down. So let's go back to this workplace example. You looked at it the first time, and much like looking at the architect's dream the first time, you noticed some things, you didn't notice others, etc. But what happens if you begin to look for lines? What happens if you begin to look for shapes? What happens if you begin to look for colors? All of a sudden, you start to notice some things that you might have missed before or not comprehended before. And that's the beauty of being able to take the elements of art and actually apply them in the workplace and be able to see things that cause you then to wonder. I wonder if that's correct. I wonder if that could be a hazard. I wonder if that's a situation that will require some corrective actions. So the application of visual literacy, we've worked hard with both the National Safety Council and the Campbell Institute to really hone in on, if we were to focus on particular processes or areas of focus with visual literacy in the safety space, where would that be? And we see that in hazard assessment. We see it in observations. We see it in improving our incident investigations because we're able to capture more of what happened, more observable information. Employee engagement is an interesting one because what we're talking about is investing in our people. We're talking about investing in their skill sets. And there's nothing more engaging for our employees than to feel invested in building their capabilities. And then last but not least, like everything else in safety, this doesn't stop or start at the factory gate or the business door. This is a 24/7 kind of thing. And while it can work in the workplace, it can work in our basements, it can work in our garages, it can work in our yards as we conduct work there as well. So it's really a 24/7 thing. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Matt and let Matt talk, bring us home with the Nestle story.
That sounds great. Thank you, Doug. I'm just going to share my screen here. Make sure you guys can see that. Let's get a confirmation. Are you guys seeing the screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. So it's cool. I've been connected with COVE for a little under a year, and every time I get to work with Doug or one of his team, I always continue to learn new things. And it's a great thing about visual literacy, great thing about life is you continue to learn. So my name is Matt Toner. I'm the Safety, Health, and Environmental Manager at the Stouffer's factory in Solon, Ohio. I've been with Nestle about 18 years, grew up in operations, actually about 12 years in operations, in the last almost 6 in safety, health, and environmental, and have certainly enjoyed that journey. But I want to talk a little bit today about how did we get connected with visual literacy. And it really starts with Panera. Anybody enjoy the Panera mac and cheese or the newly created broccoli mac and cheese? If you enjoy that, we make that here in our factory. And so it's really kind of a cool thing. It's one of our hallmark products that we get a chance to make. And we use a filler to make the mac and cheese and put it into pouches. And this was our first filler that we had. You can kind of see a film roll on the left side, and the film gets tracked through the machine. And there's some dancer bars that move back and forth. And so business was so good with Panera, we said, hey, we need a second filler to help keep up with the demand, which is great. So again, applying visual literacy, you've seen the picture of the first filler from this vantage point. Here's the picture of the second filler. Do you notice anything different? And I'm going to share a little bit of a story with you here as I share with you those pictures side by side. So what you're seeing here, at the top part where the film is at, it's not reachable on the ground. You actually need a step stool to reach up there. So what's interesting is on the first filler that we had put a guard here. On the second filler, we had not. And as the fates would have it, we had a mechanic who was standing up on the step stool and was resting his fingers there. And the dancer bar was moving back and forth and it caught his finger. Extremely fortunate that it was not more serious than it was. But what it really drove me to think about, what our factory think about, is how did we identify it here on the first one and not replicate it over here? And back in 2019, so this incident happened a little over a year ago, this got me to thinking, how did we miss this? And how can I help challenge the team? How do I challenge myself to see these things? Because I was a little bit frustrated that we had missed this, that we had allowed this hazard to be active in our factory. And so does anybody enjoy these types of pictures? Yep, that's right. It's a Where's Waldo picture. And so this is where I went to try to kind of explain what I was thinking and try to share with the factory is, hey guys, we need to look for Waldo. So in my mind, I knew we had an issue with being able to see the hazard. And so it was my best effort as of last year to say, hey, let's try to find Waldo in the form of at-risk conditions and behaviors in our factory before Waldo finds us. And so we had fun with the Where's Waldo thing. And I would share this Where's Waldo with the team. And it really has caught on, as you'll see later in the presentation. But we were trying to find Waldo, but in my mind, I'm still searching, like, again, it's good for me to use a creative thing like Where's Waldo to say and go look for it. But I was really struggling in my mind. How do I teach people to be able to see these things better? And so it really was a wrestle with me in my mind. So we challenge people, again, find Waldo before Waldo finds you or your team members. And again, we would share this story in the factory. And as I had opportunity, I would share this story outside of the factory. And again, this links back to the beauty of the BWC and the connection with local safety councils. And each one of you are here as part of this presentation. And if you've not joined a safety council, I would really encourage you to do that. I joined a couple years ago, our local safety council, the Western Reserve Safety Council, and get an opportunity to be on the steering committee now. And we had an opportunity through the Bureau of Workmen's Compensation and the Ohio Safety Congress to share a little bit of our story at I believe the 2019 or it was 2019, Carrie, I think it was, Ohio Safety Congress and Expo. And maybe it's even 2018. Anyway, so we were able to share our story, and I kind of talked a little bit about our journey. And Carrie had heard about us, or either heard us down there or heard from somebody, and she asked us to share at the Summit County Safety Council in December of last year. And so we went down and I shared this journey. I kind of shared that here's this Where's Waldo thing, and just challenging people, hey, this is really what you need to do. Challenge your folks to really search out and find Waldo. And afterwards, Carrie said, you're not, that Where's Waldo thing was great. Have you ever heard about COVE? I'm like, COVE? What is COVE? And she says, you got to check it out. It's there's this thing up at the Toledo Museum of Art. It's really cool. And so we checked into it. And a couple months later, I was there with a couple of my colleagues at the end of February, right before COVID hit. And we were at the Museum of Art taking the 2-day visual literacy workshop. And it really was fantastic. And I think the biggest thing that jumped out to me, that really struck with me, is this visual language is a process. And I think that was the biggest thing that was challenging our leaders here in the factory, but also myself, is I wanted to see it and then make a decision and move on it, right? Because if you're in a factory, if you're out in construction, if you're, in any type of business environment, moving with speed and agility is certainly a valuable thing. But you can miss some things. And so this process of what do you see, what does it mean, and what do you do about the whole process really helped slow me down and helped us to kind of stop and think out on the factory floor. So again, linking it back to, well, where's Waldo? You don't see Waldo right away, right? You've got to step back and really assess, what am I looking for, and really take those opportunities to search those things out. And we've got to do the same thing on the factory floor and really we need to be able to do that with our leaders. And so this process was like the thing I think I was looking for. How do I do this? How do we find Waldo? What are some techniques? And COVE has been an amazing partner with us in helping us to see that. So I've got this training. COVID hits. It's craziness, right? 2020, what a wild year. So how did we roll it out? So I got the training. I took the 2-day training and distilled it down to about an hour presentation. And I shared it with my leadership team, the leadership team that I sit on here at the factory. And what was incredible, it was probably the one presentation, when you share with your peers, right, you better come with something strong or else it's not really going to sink in, right? They're your greatest critics. And it was very exciting to see how well this presentation connected with them. So we shared with them the training. I'm going to show you how it connected with them in the next slide. But we also translated it into weekly Where's Waldo walks, or leadership team safety walks, which is exciting as we go and we really try to apply these principles out in the factory floor, a different part of the factory. And we're working together. And it kind of goes back to Doug's point, like we all see things differently, right? So it's good that I can see things better as a result of my training, but even with my increased awareness, I'm still going to miss some things. And so I need to have people around me to be able to take a look at issues, problems, incidents. It's good to have a good broad team, right? A good cross-functional team to take a look at these things. And that's what we're trying to build here at the factory. But for me, a passion has always been, how do I really empower the frontline leaders, the supervisors, the line leads to be able to do this too, right? I, as a safety manager, cannot be in all places at all times. And so I need to make sure that we're putting forth training and equipping our leaders to be able to see these things too. So we shared with them visual literacy training. Where's Waldo walks are going to roll out for them in Q1 of next year. So right around the corner. And then also we want to roll it out to all of our team members. So we're building visual literacy into our new training orientation, and then also into some visual literacy focused videos that we hope will go across Nestle USA, as we've had, as I and a couple other colleagues from other factories have been able to go through this. But again, what was interesting was, as I shared it with my factory leadership team, what do they do with it after that hour of training? So what was interesting, about a day or two later, I got a email back, and actually the whole leadership team got an email back. And this is a picture of our factory. So I'm going to air some dirty laundry, right? Nestle doesn't have the perfect factory. It's about 52 years old. So it's an older factory, but we try to do our best to keep it up. But he took a picture and he challenged us. He said, okay, apply visual literacy and see how many things jump out to you. And again, if you work in a factory, you could probably pick out some things maybe right now that you could see, maybe 2 or 3. You've only been given a few seconds to take a look at it. But as we kind of shot back our answers, I think collectively we came up with 9 or 10. But as Chris, our partner on the leadership team, said, "Hey, here's the things that I found." It's like, wow, man, those are amazing. And as we've studied this picture even further, we found even more things that are kind of out of place, and again, can lead to an incident, can lead to an injury. Another leadership team member took this picture, and again, just showing the engagement that this training can have with folks as you empower and equip them. Obviously, some opportunities that you see, and we had multiple emails back. This was one picture that somebody sent back of things out of place. Here's another one, people circling things that are, again, applying those elements of art, or the principles of art, the elements of design that Doug was talking about. And here's another one. So it's just that ability to be able to see and identify. If you miss it completely, it's going to be a risk. We've built this into our walks, where I reference Where's Waldo walk. So we've been fortunate to be able to apply some digital tools. You don't have to have a digital tool to do this. You could have this on paper, but we've got a Where's Waldo walk that we perform every week. And we go to a different area of the factory, and we're looking for certain things. And we've built it into where we build visual literacy into this, and it's also building capabilities. So we've got tools stored properly, and then tools not stored properly, and then examples of what we're looking for. So we're trying not only to tell people, okay, here's the principle, but as we talk about a specific category, here's what good looks like, here's what not good looks like, to try to build that capability in them. Another example that we've built into our Where's Waldo walks. And again, the more visual you can get things, pictures, videos, the better you're going to be able to communicate, communicate and train and build capability and empower folks. Just a couple testimonials. So we've had these are from some management trainees that are part of our factory, some very bright young people. And Natalie said it's really helped her see different things when she drives, which, again, how many times have we driven from work to home or home to work? And it's like, I don't remember anything about the drive, right? It's slowing her down so she's able to really see. And again, it's not the quantum leap. Like Doug was saying, it's about taking a small step to seeing things a little bit more clearly and building off of that to get increasingly better. Alyssa had the same things to say. It really stuck with her that we're really seeing only about 10%. The brain fills in the other 90%. So it's really easy to walk by something. But if we challenge ourselves, if we slow ourselves down to be able to really step back, look at it, see it, interpret it, we're going to be able to make a much better assessment and then take the right actions to help mitigate or eliminate that risk. And so in our engagement with COVE, it's really helped us in our passion to find Waldo. So our team members are speaking up, they're finding Waldo, and we're trying to empower them with the tools that will equip them and enable them to find Waldo. So we don't have to have an incident or an injury prompt our action. We want to proactively see those risks and be able to identify them. So that is how COVE has really impacted our factory, and I'm looking forward to the future and how we continue to learn and to grow in our ability to truly see the process of seeing. All righty, I think now we're going to turn it over. I think Carrie and Stephanie might be able to share some. We have some questions in the chat. We'd be happy to take those.
All right, so now would be a good time to put questions in the chat if anybody has them. Put that on, okay. I will tell you, for my experience, the first time I went through this, it made what I do make sense, because I grew up with an art teacher as a mother, spent many a summer in art museums all over. I look at stuff the way they describe in the training, and I was like, oh, you don't see that? How do you not see that? And I put in the chat, every time I do a safety walkthrough, and a lot of you guys, I've been out there before. If not, hopefully when things get back to normal, we'll be able to get back to that, and I'll come walk through your plan if you want it. But every single time almost, I always get the, I've never seen that before, or I walk by this every day. How did I not see it? And that's what this is all about, is teaching people how to see the stuff, to slow down. I love that, because I think we're always trying to go a million miles an hour, and slow down and get folks to actually see what's around them. And it is hard. It's sad when we see how little of our brain we actually use. All right. So questions: do you train folks on 5S in concert, like in conjunction with this? So have you guys done anything with Six Sigma or 5S or lean manufacturing? I guess, Doug, that's a good question for you.
Yeah, we don't train 5S, but we do talk about the interaction between visual literacy and people who do apply 5S or 6S, depending upon where you're at in your 5 or 6S journey. And, a key part of 5S is certainly going out and being able to see and observe the work area in order to be able to identify the next actions that need to be taken to get organized, get rid of things that don't belong, and that sort of thing. Using your visual literacy skills is a good way to make those identifications.
And even in our Where's Waldo walks, we've got a housekeeping focus as well. So we're, as you saw by the pictures, we got opportunities in our 5S journey, but we're trying to apply those visual literacy principles to help us with that as well. Good question.
Yeah, Carrie, you mentioned the lean as well. And we have an article that is either out or will be out shortly that was written in partnership with a professor at the Ohio State University around the relationship between operational excellence and visual literacy. And it helps make those connections.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. That's awesome. I do, and while we're waiting for any other questions, I believe I recall reading an article, Doug, that came out of COVE around SIF, the serious injury and fatality focus. Is that something that you guys have done much with too?
It is, and we've actually designed a SIF-focused module. And the connection that we established there is the idea that, in your SIF programs, there's a couple things that are really fundamental. First of all, being able to classify incidents or conditions or behaviors in terms of their potential for serious injury and fatality prevention. So your ability to sort of think critically about that, see, what you see, what it means, what actions you take, I think is really important, being able to classify correctly. And then the second aspect is that we know that serious injury and fatality occurrences are typically led by some form of precursors. So if we can train ourselves to be able to see the precursors more effectively, then we have the opportunity to intervene in a way that will prevent serious injuries and fatalities from occurring. And if you go to our website, covectr.com, there's both a webinar and there's a white paper on serious injury and fatality prevention and visual literacy.
And you guys put out a newsletter as well, right?
We do. You can sign up for the newsletter. All roads lead to a website. So please come and visit ours, and you'll find a wealth of information.
Awesome. Well, I am not seeing any more questions. Stephanie, have you gotten any questions sent to you privately?
I have not seen any other ones.
Okay, well, with that, then feel free to stick around or ask a question if you still have it. But thank you guys for joining us. We will meet January 19th for our next Safety Council virtual meeting. We're going to be talking about drug-free in the workplace, medical marijuana. If you guys remember, Diane McDowell from Training Marbles was, I think, 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. She was one of our presenters, but she's going to be presenting for us virtually. Let's see. I was wondering if you could possibly send over a spreadsheet or for review and to look back on. I'm not sure. Are you talking about the OSHA logs, Anna Marie, or I'm not sure.
Or maybe is it the presentation maybe she's talking about?
Yeah, maybe the presentation. Let's get an answer there. Or Anna Marie, if you want to, the presentation.
So we did record this. So we're going to upload it to our YouTube channel, and then we will send a link out to everyone, and we will include Doug and Matt's contact information. So if you should have a question that you don't want to ask in front of the group, you were able to get in touch with them directly, or you can reach out to Carrie and myself. Our contact information's there, and we can relay the question and information to them as well.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday season, and man, let's go on to 2021, right? Thank you, guys. A lot of applause. You can't hear it, but there's lots of applause out there.
It was a pleasure to be with you, and thanks, Matt, for the partnership.
Just a second.
Likewise, Doug. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
You.
Okay, what's that?
You didn't happen to bring Cheryl Hassinger for 10?
No.
Okay.